Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I like to discuss how even the pro-Brexit press are now starting to report on the serious situation with food shortages that's already hit and is set to get much worse over the coming months, and also to wonder if the government will be forced to deploy the army to help out with distribution. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So for those who've watched my last couple of PMQ's videos, I've talked about the general strategy that Boris Johnson employs when it comes to problems that his government has either caused or is refusing to deal with. His first port of call is to deny that the problem even exists. If that doesn't work, he denies the cause of the problem instead. But it's not just Boris Johnson who employs these tactics, so too do his supporters in the media and elsewhere. I had someone provide me with some light entertainment on Twitter at the weekend. They tried claiming that there were no food shortages in their part of the country at least, as if to suggest it must just be your bit or for whatever reason. Now here's the thing. I have gone around 3 different supermarkets in the last few weeks to check it out. Of course, that's one little area of the country. And the shortages come in 2 forms. First of all, straightforward, empty shelves. Simple as that. You go past a shelf and there's nothing on it, or the fruit and veg baskets, which are supposed to, of course, contain something and contain nothing. This is the clearest sign of a shortage, and they were in every single supermarket I went into. In addition, I asked a few other people to let me know what it was like in the supermarkets they go to. Same thing. But I'll come back to that in a moment. The second type of shortage is where you have an unavailable product, but it's not obvious because in order to hide the shortages, the shop simply uses the empty space to put out more of a product they have plenty of. So classic cases that have been pointed out by people who've observed this are filling up shelves that should contain. So there was one where a guy showed, well, this is where your plain rice is supposed to be, but they've not got as much of that. So here's extra shelves of the microwave rice stuff. Or filling up fruit baskets with surplus of oranges and bananas. So stuff that you've got plenty of, you just spread it out more. But you can see how the con is supposed to work. Somewhat, not talking about the shelf stacking, in terms of trying to deny the problem. Someone says there are no shortages where they are. Naturally, I'm not going to ask where they are, drive 200 or more miles away to photograph bare shelves to win an internet argument. So they think it's a winner. Try to put out the impression that I'm just jumping to conclusions because I saw a particular thing out of stock a couple of times, which of course can happen now and then with or without Brexit, with or without the pandemic. Unfortunately, they forgot that the internet contains Google. I encouraged them to type UK supermarket food shortages in Google Images with a date range of the last month so that we don't end up with last year's stuff. And behold the huge numbers of photos of empty shelves around the country. But more than that, with helpful links to both national and local media reports from the last few weeks on the evidently widespread issue. Then this guy, so I tried doing that. Then they tried to link me a page from the Department for Agriculture. Did a little screenshot and it said there are no food shortages in the country. I had to point out this, what you've linked to me is from the United States Department for Agriculture. When they say this country, they mean the United States, not the United Kingdom. We all laughed. They went away, hopefully to rethink their life. And these sorts of denials work when they work, because even when something is evident, most people don't see the evidence with their own eyes. When Boris Johnson says that he made hospital parking free last year, the only people who would know otherwise were those who had cause to go to a hospital where it wasn't free and observed that it wasn't free. There were some hospitals where it was. Only those people would see the lie. When he said that they'd reinstated the nursing bursaries, only the actual nurses or their families leaving the courses with debt would see the lie. And denying food shortages could work on some because not everyone goes to the shops. If you're doing your shopping online, you may or may not notice. You'll only actually notice if something you want is out of stock. Visiting the shop, in person, bit different, because there you may well go down an aisle that's badly affected and you can't fail to notice it then. But the problems are so acute that there is no longer any point in hiding it. Yesterday, the Telegraph ran a piece on it. Naturally, at no point did they even mention Brexit. There was no attempt to discuss the cause at all in their article. Of course not, because you couldn't do that without mentioning Brexit. But that's fine. I've discussed some of the causes already. It's actually good to discuss solutions, because that's what this article largely was about. And I'll tell you what I found really interesting. It's that towards the end of the article, there was the following line. The government has no plans to use military personnel. Another intervention industry chiefs have called for. Now, I found that interesting in a number of ways. First of all, I've seen comments on social media from people who keep themselves in the know saying that the government are indeed considering the use of the military. I mean, it is an obvious step to take. Regardless of what long-term solutions can be adopted, right now, the only way basically the problem is shortage of lorry drivers. We have shortages of other people in distribution as well, warehousing staff and so on. Ultimately, we've got a massive shortage of people who can drive a lorry, who are willing to drive that lorry or are able to drive that lorry. What we need is a load more people who can drive a lorry. The obvious thing to do is, first of all, make it pay a lot better for people in this country. But even that wouldn't fill the gap. We need to get more lorry drivers from overseas. And yeah, again, like I said, the points people are making about the job being absolutely poor pay for back-breaking, frustrating work, where there seems to be no adequate safety net in place, entirely valid. And that's not going to be improved by the government extending lorry drivers' hours, which is only going to be leading to compromising road safety. And maybe there are qualified lorry drivers doing other work because it pays just as well for less hassle. Lorry driver pay is not always great. I think you pretty much have to run your own business to get paid decently. But maybe some of those people would get back in the cab if the salary went up enough. But I don't get the impression that the numbers exist in the country to deal with that. And besides, that would send the costs of everything up. Something that both the haulage and retail industries are resisting as much as possible, whether right or wrong. Now, if the government don't want to dilute their immigration rules, where else are you going to get drivers from? Well, the army is the obvious place. However, I suppose that would mean, if you use the army, first of all, you can't use it long term. And what we have here is a long-term problem. And secondly, you are basically then admitting that this is a national emergency. The second reason why I found the comment odd was that it was just out of place. The article, it talked about a range of solutions with quotes from the Road Haulage Association. And they didn't quote anything about the military. Then they had this one line about the military. Then it went on to quotes from the Cold Storage Federation and the shortage of other roles as well, not just lorry drivers. So all you had was this one line sticking out like a sore thumb about the government not planning to use the army. There was no real lead up to it. There was no explanation of it. It was just thrown in there to separate a paragraph about tired lorry drivers and problems with warehouses. But although the article didn't bother to explore the causes of these problems, because that would be to point out that Brexit is not as shiny as was first promised, and although it didn't really hammer home what any realistic options would be, which is not an easy thing, granted, all of the practical solutions do not seem to be politically acceptable to the government for reasons. But what the article did do well was to point out where we are and where we're headed. It didn't seem to pull its punches there, I have to say. They talked about this being an issue that will hit small independent businesses, restaurants, cafes. They were particularly talking about someone who runs a cafe being hit particularly hard. How the logistics industry is quite brilliant at working out solutions, but sudden demands unexpectedly can throw it out completely. Sudden demands like England progressing well in the football, for example. How 50 million tonnes of food a week are going to waste just from Tesco alone because they can't be transported. I shudder to think how much food is actually going to waste in the country. In a country where 1 in 8 people are classed as being in food poverty. Just from this one problem. It talked about how food that goes direct from farms are especially hit hard because retailers will reject them if they're delayed. It also talked about after summer, schools going back. Now, if there aren't the delivery drivers to get food to schools to provide the school meals, schools can't operate. Now, this was being discussed with patrons at the weekend, and I had to say at the time, I fundamentally do not believe the government would do that. I cannot believe they'll create a situation or even allow a situation where schools couldn't be open. So that means they are going to have to come up with some solution. The article also talks about how warehousing space is going to be needed after the summer to start stockpiling for Christmas demand under normal circumstances. What do you do then? Do you say you can't stockpile for Christmas? Well, Boris, that means you're cancelling Christmas for the second year in a row. What do? They're going to have to do something. At the moment, all they seem to do is to say the industry need to sort it out. The industry are doing their best. Well, I say they're doing their best, maybe not. But they are doing what they're prepared to do, at the very least. They're certainly doing more than the government. What this needs is the government to also coordinate. Like I say, this pro-Brexit paper, it avoided discussing the causes of what is, a complex situation, admittedly, because it's impossible to do that without mentioning Brexit. Or how, although there are shortages of lorry drivers around Europe, because it's just a general shortage, there are not widespread food shortages in their shops. But it pulled no punches on what is happening and what is going to happen over the summer and after summer. And now that, Tory and Brexit supporting national media are starting to report on it, it can only be because it is now accepted as a problem you can't hide from people. That people are going to notice, even if you don't report on it. So you might as well report on it. Because I've got no doubts the decision to report on it will be for the purposes of slowly steering people away from questions about Brexit. They don't want people coming to their own conclusions. They want to be able to smudge it. But it is still being reported. Those who listened to the people in the affected industries knew this was going to happen months ago. With some, you could argue, years ago. But we certainly knew this was coming before it hit. So I have no reason to doubt at all the same people when they explain what is going to happen this month, next month, in September. So the main question now is not, are the industry right to worry about this? That was the question a few months ago. The answer was yes, because do you know what? They know what they're talking about. The question now is, what will the government do about it? The industry is already doing what it feels it can do about it. Because I don't believe the government aren't considering the use of the military. They have to be, because look at the alternatives. It's an obvious step, but also a bit of a link to the past. Actually, do you know what? I was getting close to the 100,000 subscribers now, and I was having a look back. I think my first ever Brexit video was on when Theresa May was Prime Minister at the time, and her plans to use the army to help with distribution in the event of a no-deal Brexit back in 2018. So if you're in any doubts as to how hard this Brexit is despite the deal, we may have to resort to doing something that was planned for a no-deal Brexit. But anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.